He's up late to give you the news you can't get anywhere else early. He fights for truth and justice and the American way. Please welcome our pal from the Paragon Trust Company, the real Tony D. Tony D'Angelo.
Here we go. At 5 minutes after the hour, the one and only Tony D'Angelo is joining us. You can find out more about him at Tony D'Angelo 7. Of course, on Thursday, he unleashes his video on his YouTube page. Tony, how are you today? Good morning.
Good morning, Elci. Good morning, everybody. I'm proud to be among you.
All right, we're going to start with yesterday's shooting, right?
Well, yeah, it's kind of an interesting note. It's I guess there comes a time in every man's life, and I've had plenty of them. I worked in that building, 345 Park Avenue, for 3.5 years.
Really?
I know it extremely well. I know the neighborhood extremely well. Of course, things change over time. And the first thing, now, I've been in office buildings in and out. I've been in high rises, 40 some odd years. And the first thing you look at, if it's me, if you watch the shooter coming up the walk, that is a large walk. I mean, you can see a lot if you're like way up, and I'm well familiar. How does he walk in? And people are looking at him. And they're like, well, what is he doing? What is he doing with the gun? I mean, and he picks this time of 6 something when everything's laid back. Now, I think it would strain. This is just what would be going through my head if I was working in that building, if I did. He just happened to walk in and do it. I think he knew the time to come. I think he was observant. But the other thing, and this is the thing I think that where it really comes down to, we can talk about mental health. We can talk about the condition of the streets, all bad. A lot of the building security when you're in these buildings is not where it needs to be. Case in point, we had people in one of the buildings, excuse me, where I was. And, a lot of the security is retired police officers. Now, I'm very pro-police, but the thing is, these guys retired, a lot of them, at least the ones we ran into before they got there. They're not getting up. They're not walking around. They're not paying attention. And when the first thing I look at is I see this guy here walking over, this very large expanse. That is one big patio. And it's like, how is he able to do that? And, the second thing, and this is just kind of I don't know if this will come out. That building, 345 Park Avenue, I don't want to cause rumor, but this would be going through my head, is owned by a family by the last name of Rudin. They are very large Jewish developers, and they have a lot of investments in the city. I don't know if that's necessarily the connection, but you always think about that, especially in this culture. But the first thing is that, as they always tell us, be alert, be aware, look to see what's happening around you. And it's really when you're sitting up there in some little cubicle and you're really at the mercy of everything else, these are the things that go through your head. Now, I'm sure the conversation today in that building, if anybody's going into work, is, we told them to pay attention, but I think you're going to see that in the next couple of days. And from being there and from being in these environments, I'll go out on a limb and say this is really going to be coming out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it seems like I don't know if it's a logical explanation, but the NFL or football angle seems to be strong, at least as of right now, because he purposely shot himself in the chest so they could study his brain. And so I don't know, but I'm sure
no. I mean, it's just it's really sad, but basically it's you have to be paying attention. I do know, like right after the '93 bombing at the World Trade Center, everybody started to have to walk through the checkpoints. Everybody had to pay attention. Now I think we've gotten loose on that, and it's I mean, like 6:30 is not a time to let down. And that's the other thing. If I were working in the building late at night, Why weren't the doors on automatic lock? I mean, these were things that used to go on automatically.
You know,
But
Tony,
anyway,
we're in an age though. I don't know if you do this, but I mean, 25 years ago, I didn't do this, but your head's on a swivel all the time. You're looking around, you're checking out your
consistently.
environment. And that's just the environment. That's the world that we live in now. We're always have to be on guard. It's sad, really.
Consistently, but these are just my thoughts, and it's so sad. Just another black mark on New York, another black mark on American City. Like we need another black mark on American City.
Good
But
point.
anyway, that's my first thought.
All right, Tony D'Angelo again. If you want to ever reach out to him or follow him up on the X, it's Tony D'Angelo 7. So we move from that to the Connecticut solution for high energy prices. You have the solution, Tony?
Well, I put it this way: me, myself, and I know, but I can tell you what the problem is, and I think what I might be able to tell you will lead to a solution.
Right.
Over the weekend, there was a lot of discussion about the borrowing of $150 million. Basically, our governor, Ned Lamont, known affectionately, by me and others as King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable, decided to borrow $150 million to help us all with our energy costs. And he pretty much told the state bond commission, you will do this. And I'm pretty sure they're going to rubber stamp him. Yeah, I'm basically, I listen, just the way things run. But a very good friend of mine on Twitter had the two perfect comments. And he said, the Connecticut really makes its own memes. Nobody has to write memes for Connecticut. And he said, I think aptly in this case, Connecticut is a government of morons elected by idiots. So this is what we're doing. We're borrowing $155 million. We're adding to debt to pay our energy costs and to facilitate the payment of the public benefits payment, which we all have come to know and love. To those that watch from out of state, this is where we take probably 20 to 25% of our electric bill, and we pay for everything that has nothing to do with us receiving power. But anyway, the allocation of funds from what I'm reading in this is 125 million for hardship programs. So in other words, we're going to take 150 million dollars and 125 million of that is going to go to feed the monkey that's consuming us. Then the second thing is 30 million is given to subsidize the electric vehicle subsidy programs, the one that our president Donald Trump is, wisely tapering for many, many reasons. So it might give you or me $5 to $10 savings every single month. And this is only for 6 months, Lee Elci, believe it or not. This is only for 6 months. Then they've got to come back and borrow more. Now, just about our entire legislature has this whole thing of Republicans, Democrats. I don't know if we have any independents, Germans, Martians, doesn't matter. This thing of we're going to keep borrowing, and we're going to keep borrowing to pay the bills, and somehow things are going to get better. This is the equivalent of I can't pay my mortgage. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to my last credit card, and I'm going to take the biggest advance that I can, and I'm going to pay down my mortgage. Great, I'm here for another couple of months. And what do I do 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? Well, I'm just going to see if I can borrow some more. I mean, why does this state, or why does so many states, because it's like, again, I'm pro-environment, but, their means of dealing with environment is just totally botso. What is this whole thing of, we're just going to have a green solution for everything, and we're not going to deal with the root cause, which really, if you're going to develop and if you're going to need what you need to do in order to do things, you've got to get cheaper, more dependable, and more affordable energy sources in here. And they are all running from it, I should say. And it's like, I will say it, but no one in politics will say it. You've got to get the natural gas pipeline expanded. You're never going to have the cost come down until you do it. You're never going to be able to develop business unless you do it. And we're just going to keep borrowing. We're just going to, and this is going to be a solution. And Ned's going to be able to turn and say, look, I got your energy prices down. Isn't this great? And basically when this lead balloon lands on our heads, it is not going to be pretty.
Again, Tony D'Angelo is with us. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of nuclear energy, and I don't know how much more we can facilitate there. This natural gas pipeline that Trump's trying to get done, and I don't know. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's likely, considering that we're in this ultra blue state, Tony. I don't see them ever coming.
Well, I understand that, but how else do you solve the problem? And I mean, I think to keep giving people this false hope of we will keep your energy prices down, or the Republican idea is we're going to get the public benefit cost into the general, shall we say, the general debt. I mean, that's like transferring from the 4% credit card to the 2.5% credit card. These are all non-solutions. It just doesn't work, like Elci. That's the problem.
I don't know where you're getting a 4% credit card, TD. They're all like,
Yeah, I do a little pittance and then I pay it off. But yeah,
all right. Let's flip from that. Let's get to let's do a little AI before we run too deep into this. You've been studying this pretty immensely, and what's the latest with the AI here in the state?
well, as far as the AI, there was an action plan last week from the president, Donald Trump, and he, for all of the things back and forth, we may like a lot of the things he's doing. I love a lot of the things he's doing economically. He sees it. He sees the development. He wants the private sector, where it really needs to be within the private sector, to take the lead for AI. Because look at it this way. If the public sector keeps getting involved in AI and keeps putting, quote unquote, a political hand stamp on AI, we're going to have the equivalent of the electric situation in Connecticut, basically. This is, where it all comes out to. But he's saying, he's looking at China, he's looking at the world, and he says, I want to have incentives for things to grow. And in order for things to grow, I want to make this open source, where little businesses like ours can have full access to AI, where bigger businesses could have access to AI with reasonable precautions, but not with overregulation. Now, think of it. If you hear a lot of, whatever qualifies as economics in Connecticut, but you hear a lot of things of, oh, we need data centers, or Connecticut's going to do data centers. And how are you going to, first of all, how are you going to run a data center without cheap, affordable, plentiful energy? It's just not going to happen. And dependable energy. If I'm sitting here dialing in on my computer from Pomfret, Connecticut, and I'm dialing into a data center in, Omaha, Nebraska, and oh, gee, there wasn't enough wind today. It just doesn't work like that, frankly. And it's so he's running that with the energy and saying, we've got to have that kind of power to compete with China, to compete with the national stage. Now, what's interesting to me is we went over this on the video show 30 with Tony. The House of Representatives, when they were negotiating the One Big Beautiful Bill, they had a $250,000 fine for the misuse of ID information. Like if you were to take somebody's, like what was done to President Trump. That was scaled back in the Senate to $5,000 for a whole bunch of reasons. The Byrd rule, budgetary. It didn't really have to do with taxation and that sort of thing. So basically, the over regulation of AI, data protection in Connecticut, we're going to protect all the data. The operative question then becomes, if the states start to over regulate to the point where business cannot get what it needs to in order to do it, the government's going to say, well, maybe the state doesn't get the funding that it needs to. And something, to me, for somebody like me, it's music to my ears, because why should I have to keep fighting my state to do the simplest things here? Why can't I, have what I need? Now, I'm all for reasonable protections, but yet if there is a good protection or a great protection in place federally, why does my state have to rewrite it in such a way to favor them and disfavor me and disfavor other small businesses? So this is really, really good stuff. So the other thing would be is that if I'm seeing that there's something here which is impeding me, I can go to the federal government and say, hey, look at what they're doing here. That's not exactly right. So this is really, In my estimation, a good thing. The other thing would be it gives a impression that we're not going to be sitting there behind other people. Other people aren't going to be advancing us. We're going to be able to do things that we're capable to do. And personally, I think I'm very excited about that. I mean, this is what we need. We can't compete in the world stage if we're fighting AI with one hand behind our back. It's just not going to happen.
I agreed. All right, moving from AI to again, looks like here in Connecticut, we've talked about this forever and ever and ever, and it doesn't seem to have a good answer, at least for me. I mean, I'm sure other states across the country probably feel the same thing. But housing shortage, Tony, where are we with that?
This is interesting, and I'm just going to go back here a little bit on my notes if I can. This is interesting. There is a group in Connecticut called the Connecticut Voices for Children. They are a very liberal, well-funded think tank. They're as liberal as the day is long. They believe that the only solution is a public solution, and neither you nor I, Elci, are paying enough taxes. But they did a report, and this was reported in the Connecticut Mirror, which is another very liberal news source, if you will, or another liberal source. And they've come out and said, the job growth in Connecticut is 1/3 of the national average. Now, 1/3 of the national average. A lot of that is public jobs. There's very little private sector jobs being created because it's such an unfavorable environment to create private sector jobs. And their solution, of course, in the Connecticut Voices for Children is, well, we need to pay more in wages and we need more public sector jobs. That's going to fix everything. But just extracting that information, which the Connecticut Voices for Children did get from federal statistics, it's not this is quote unquote, was Mike Wallace used to say, their words and not mine. How do we have a housing shortage if we have no job growth? That tells me that there's not enough people in Connecticut working. So if there's not enough people in Connecticut working, Elci, there's not enough people because our population has not grown. If anything, it's decreased over 10 years. So what type of people population, shall I say, is coming into the state for this great influx of why we need housing? I've got to believe that, number one, if there's any growth at all, it's certainly not employment growth. It's growth of people who aren't working, who are dependent on federal and state subsidies. And if that's the case, we're building housing for people that can't pay for the housing, and we don't have job growth. And God help us in this state if we lose those 5 or 6 billionaires who essentially are floating the state, who are catered to, because if they go, we have absolutely positively no budget. And when they do go, and they're going to go one way or the other, they're going to go either I've had enough, I'm getting the heck out of here, or they're going to go by just the force of natural, whatever you want to call it, creation, revolution. Their kids ain't staying. Their kids are not going to stay around here. They're going to say, screw this. You screwed my parent. I'm getting the hell out of here. So basically, I mean, between that, the energy, the job growth, wanting to restrict AI, I mean, something's got to change in the state for things to improve. And I'm a believer that things can improve, but certainly not going to be improving this way. I can tell you that much.
Since we're focused on Connecticut, just wrap this thing up with some of the reasons why you don't think Connecticut will embrace Donald Trump's economic policies.
They hate him. Simple as that, and just as difficult, because if it has the name Trump to it, it's basically, you can't even say Trump in Connecticut without getting your hands slapped. Look at it this way, energy, right? Dr. Henry Kissinger, that's, believe me, not a well-revered person in conservative circles, said, 50 years ago, he who controls oil controls the world. We ain't controlling oil. We ain't controlling energy. We ain't controlling nothing. We're borrowing. We're dealing with this stupid stuff which isn't going to sustain anything, will not sustain business growth, will not put money into the hands of people. We didn't have time to get into the comptroller's report, but basically it is this whole thing of, this state is running around saying, Lord Almighty, what are we going to do when the money starts? There's no thoughts to development. There's no thoughts of having more affordable energy, having more job growth, using the things that are useful in the one big beautiful bill to develop business. And that's the thing that, and I don't know, I hear of no one, I don't hear of any Republicans even that are really looking at this and saying, hey, this is really good stuff. It is really, to your point, to your question, long answer. Why don't they embrace it? You can't say Trump. That's a dirty word in Connecticut.
That's about right. Tony D'Angelo, once again, Tony D'Angelo 7 on the X. And of course, on Thursday, he will unleash and unveil yet another YouTube video, so they can find that. Where do they go for that, Tony?
30 with Tony, 3 at YouTube and Twitter. All you have to remember is just type in 30 with Tony at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. You'll go right to the page. You'll see the show that is new for that day.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you as always. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, pal.
You got it, Tony D'Angelo. We'll come back. Stick around, everybody.